Master Phil here. Master Phil in your corner in undefeated media studios with Dougie Fresh Friedman as always. And we have a return guest, my very close friend, awesome jiu-jitsu man, one of the best you ever want to meet, Khyl Farrison. And we're going to get down to this after my shameless plugs. So first we have the body bell method. That's on sale right now for a $100 discount. You can become certified in kettlebells, body weight, and dynamic tension. The only one available out there right now. We have the COVID special running until the end of July. We also have online training through American Eagle Live, as well as the Kettlebell Workout Library and Survival Strong. And if you want something a little bit different, I'm one of the featured performers on UBQ Fit, as well as Burn Along. So enough with the plugs. We have some real important things to get down to. As you guys may or may not know, Khyl is a law enforcement officer, and he has a great deal of experience in the field of law enforcement, as well as in jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And we really have to address this. I mean, they're talking about defunding the police. We got to look at the state of the training, and the state of the training now that we see is not so great. So, in light of several things that have gone on, can we pull up the Pennsylvania State Troopers?
You got it.
Okay. So you'll notice in this clip, there's two Pennsylvania State Troopers pull someone over for drunk driving.
Do we need sound on it, or? I can play. I just
don't really need the sound, but
don't know if you want to talk while you watch. But we're queued up.
So we're queued up right here, and I'll do a little talking. Then Kyle, I'm going to give you the ball, and I'm going to have you run with it like you did in high school football.
Sure.
All right.
46 law enforcement officers were fatally shot last year in the line of duty. There might have been two more. Newly released video shows a shootout between two Pennsylvania troopers and a man now about to be sentenced for attempted murder. Here's Tony DeCola.
Wow. This is the moment last November when 22-year-old Daniel Clary opened fire on state troopers Ryan Seipel and Seth Kelly. That's Corporal Kelly kneeling to shoot back, taking bullets to the leg and neck before leaping to find cover. A dramatic turn in what began with Clary pulled over for simple speeding.
Watch some of these critical mistakes.
But when the troopers tried to arrest Clary on suspicion of driving while high, he resisted. Clary, shot with a taser, falls into a lane of traffic and writhes on the ground. In the struggle, Corporal Kelly's spare pistol somehow tumbles loose, secured by Seipel. For a few seconds, Corporal Kelly appears to be in control. But moments later, the troopers are punching and kicking, all but begging Clary to put his hands behind his back.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's actually the first time I've seen this.
Oh, really?
Grabs a pistol from his car and opens fire before driving off.
Corporal Kelly, who applied his own tourniquet at the scene, was clinically dead at the hospital and spent 12 days in a coma. He is now recovering, though, and plans to return to work with Seipel. As for the driver, Clary, he was arrested at a hospital down the road, and Jackie now faces sentencing this month for attempted murder.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's some scary stuff. That's scary stuff on many levels. Just look at you considering what a cop has to face every time they pull somebody over. You then look at what kind of training did those police officers have? I mean, their balance was off, their positioning was off. I mean, these are PA state troopers. This is no podunk little organization here. But tell me what.
Well, Phil, first of all, thank you for having me back on the show today. First and foremost, it's been a couple months since we've done something like this, and we're still revisiting and we're still discussing the same topics that we discussed 6 to 8 months ago.
Right.
And that video was the first time I saw that video, and it was very disturbing.
Right. I could see the look on your face.
The one thing that I didn't hear from the video that's super important what was the communication between the police officers and, the person when they brought him outside the vehicle? Because first and foremost, that's your opportunity as a law enforcement officer to either de-escalate or escalate the situation, depending on how you go about using your words.
Right.
And I don't think I heard in that video what the conversation was. However, it appeared though it went from 0 miles an hour to 150 miles an hour in the matter of seconds. I actually think that the officers did a pretty good job in terms of returning fire. But before it even got to that point.
That's what I'm talking about.
Before it even got to that point, right, I didn't see a lot of control. No. I didn't see a lot of initiation. I saw both officers, not having a clear idea of how to bring someone to the ground.
No.
And those are all things that need to be learned by each and every police officer.
Yes.
And the problem that I'm seeing now is, and if you take a look at the news or read the newspaper, defunding the police departments, right? And this can be a touchy subject depending on, where you stand in line, right? I don't think that the police departments need to be defunded. I actually think that more money needs to be pumped into the departments to better develop and better equip the officers. And it may take more resources and it may take more time, but what I'm seeing is that when you have inexperienced people training inexperienced people, now you deal with lawsuits. Now you deal with shootings, right? So more money needs to be pumped into the law enforcement agencies to have their personnel better equipped.
I could not agree with you more, because here's something that people talk about, and they say, well, it costs too much because, additional training for the officers, additional mental training for the officers, additional jiu-jitsu, martial arts, self-defense, defensive tactics training for the officers. But people don't realize, what does it cost us to society if we don't have that? How many lawsuits are we going to get? How much bad press are we going to get? How much disconcert in the community will you have if you have these situations that are constantly escalated? I mean, that should have never gotten to that point. If those guys were trained properly, there's no way. Yeah, I mean, you see that they couldn't even do a takedown.
First and foremost, like myself working in law enforcement, I've never conducted a routine traffic stop like that because I work in the confines of the jail. Yeah. So things are different, right?
Well, you have to transport.
We don't have guns. We don't have tasers on us, for the duration of our tour, like the police officer. Those are tools that the officer is given to utilize, right? But the main tool that the officer is given to utilize is their mouth and their interpersonal skills, right? And what I'm seeing in society right now, just watching the news and the newspaper, there's a lack of respect from communities towards police departments, right? And it's being ignited by the news, okay? And now we have, certain departments defunding. We have a situation in Minneapolis where the folks have voted to completely abolish the police department, right? It's important to have law enforcement officers, right? Not because it's rule of law, not because you have a bunch of guys and girls walking around with guns enforcing things, right? There's a need to have some level of law.
Absolutely.
And when you take it away, we're already seeing what happens when you take it away.
Without civility, you cannot have civilization.
Absolutely.
I mean, the wolves will run rampant. And the fact that they've neutered our sheepdogs and continue to do so, and reducing the number of sheepdogs, how is that going to help society? How is it going to protect the average citizen? How is it going to make someone not scared to walk down to the corner to the store when they're afraid for their lives? I mean, this is no way to live. And one of the things that we can talk about is something that we happen to know a lot about personally is martial arts, jiu-jitsu, grappling. These techniques I see lacking, a lack thereof being employed in the training and in the follow-up training. I know that police officers, they have to qualify with a gun every year and so forth. But how about defensive tactics? Most police officers go 20, 25 years without firing their weapon. Yet they have hands-on all the time. The chance of you putting your hands on someone, having to deal with a confrontation where it's physical daily basis, especially in the higher crime areas. And the more that an officer is proficient in this, the better chance they are of de-escalation, and controlling the situation, not letting it get out of control like that. I mean, that is bone chilling watching that.
Think about this, right? So each department has a different use of force module, right? Each department follows, they're similar, but there are some disparities between, departments in terms of use of force. But I can be pretty sure that interpersonal skills and defensive tactics all fall in line before your deadly physical force.
As they should, yes. Escalation of force.
Your ASP, your taser, even your spray, and obviously the gun, right? So your interpersonal skills, meaning how you communicate with the public, ultra important. Because that could either escalate or de-escalate, the situation. There are times where I'm sure no matter what you say, it's going to escalate, right? You need to be equipped with better tools than to just reach for your gun because you're scared, right? And so I had a conversation with a very, very well-respected police officer probably about 2 weeks ago. It was at the height of the riots and things. And the guy's been in law enforcement for 22, 23 years, so he has a significant amount of experience. And, he said, one of the things that I noticed throughout the course of my career, how all new law enforcement officers, they expect that they're going to get respect from the public just because of the uniform or just because of the gun. And he even said to me, he said, it doesn't work that way.
No.
You reap what you sow. If you give respect, you will get respect.
Yes.
But don't expect you're going to get, a level of respect just because you're walking around with a badge and a uniform on, because it doesn't work that way.
And I'll tell you that's a sign of our society nowadays, because people don't feel they have to earn anything. You have to earn respect. You have to earn respect on a mat. You have to earn respect on the streets. You have to earn respect in the ring. And if you did nothing to earn that respect just because you showed up, it's like the participation trophies. Sure. Everyone's so used to just getting accolades for doing nothing, just being there. No, it's not the way it is. Sure. You got to earn it. And this is the first time we're ever discussing that.
Yeah.
And it definitely bleeds out into all areas of society.
So I've had a couple different professions over the course of my life. I worked in college strength conditioning for 9 years. And to be quite honest with you, you have to have body of work to move forward in that profession.
Yes.
Right? You have to have shown, your next supervisor that you have a level of work ethic. You have a level or body work. You have to prove that you have developed athletes at the next level to advance them, right? Law enforcement should be the same. All professions should be the same.
Yes.
Right? And what I see in civil service specifically, it's important that you score well on the test. And in civil service, that's probably the main thing that's looked at is your score, be it a promotional test or a test to just start and become a police officer, right? But once you start moving up the rank, you need to have a little bit better knowledge than just scoring well on a test. Body of work is super important. You need to ensure that those that are working underneath you, if they come to you, you have the experience and the wherewithal to be able to direct them in the proper direction.
Is there a merit system or anything in place, or is it vary department to department?
I don't know how it varies from department to department. I know that they just gave a promotional test for where I work, and fortunately, 7 officers scored 100 on the promotional test to become a sergeant, right? So the level of education has gone up significantly in terms of where those officers scored. I chose to not take the promotional exam. Okay, I'm happy and I'm comfortable with where I'm at right now. But we have guys and girls, men and women, that score very well on the test, right? With that being said, though, okay, being a supervisor, being a sergeant, overseeing people underneath you, those people need to know that you have a body of work to provide outside of the test score.
And now there's no method for that, or is it just recommendation, or is it they don't have?
Phil, who knows? That's a touchy subject.
Yeah. Because that also kind of brings me to this next point is you're looking at these police oversight commissions. Who who comprises? How are these commissions comprised? What gives? Are they just someone from the community? Did these people have policing background? Many of them don't, and if they do, sometimes maybe they're retired. They've been off the street for a long time.
Sure.
Do they have somebody who knows martial arts on it? Because listen, we know there's a reason that you tap in jiu-jitsu when you're getting choked. Why? Because you can't speak.
Sure.
So, I would love to go onto any of these forums, okay, when someone says, they say they can't breathe. I will take the person and choke them and ask them to talk to me. Say you can't breathe. No, they'll have to tap. Like, we've all been there. Sure. We've choked and been choked, okay? You have to tap. You can't talk. So, when we discussed another time, there's many other factors involved in this, because what do you have? You could have adrenaline pumping through your system. Right? You could have, you could be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. You could be overweight. You're obviously in a heightened state of arousal because you're in a confrontation, and those things do contribute to the inability to breathe or inability to breathe fully.
Right.
And then plus it could be maybe some underlying medical conditions that people aren't aware of.
Sure.
But by saying you can't breathe because you're being choked is disingenuous.
Well, let me touch on something that you just brought up, right? So I just requalified with my handgun. It's departmental. We must requalify one time every year, okay? You must pass the state qualification. You must pass the departmental qualification. And so I've been on the force for 8 years, and probably in the 8-year time period, this year is the first year that I actually shot really good, and I felt comfortable about it. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Our staff hired one of our officers, and he's an excellent firearms guy. And the reason why I say that is because, to me, he's an expert in the field. He reads books. He studies. He educates himself. He can tell you about calibers. He can tell you about he can tell you everything about a gun. The facility did the right thing and hired the right person for the job. And I haven't heard any complaints from any of the officers. I actually heard what a breath of fresh air, right? I shot better than I ever shot before. And myself included, I've shot better this year than I've ever shot before, because you had the right person in the right scenario, and now you got results. And what happens is that if you have the wrong people in the wrong scenario, right? Misinformation, okay? Lack of experience and training, lawsuits, right? So that's an important thing that, those that move on to those supervisory positions and those that move on to those specialized units, to have a body of work, right? That's congruent with what you're being asked to do.
Yes, that's huge. That's huge. Now, the thing is, who makes these decisions? That's where,
I can tell you this. I sat down with a supervisor probably about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago, and went over the new New York State guidelines regarding chokes, and I believe there's the Eric Garner law or something like that. And the problem that I saw, and I had a couple of questions for the supervisor. What is classified as a choke? Right? Because the way we classify choke in jiu-jitsu, right, is different than how New York State is classifying a choke.
Yes.
Right? And so when I reviewed it and we talked about it, I walked away and I thought, I wonder how much experience and expertise those at the very top that are making the curriculum have in terms of deciding what is a choke, what is not a choke, right? How much force should be used. Because I simply asked, I said, what about the basic seatbelt grip in jiu-jitsu, right? You need to have the basic seatbelt grip in jiu-jitsu to control the upper body, torso, and neck.
Yes.
Now you can no longer do that in New York State because that's classified as a choke.
See, this is what I'm talking about. This brings me to that point, is that who is making these rules up? Does this person have any experience in martial arts? Does this person know what a seatbelt grip is in jiu-jitsu, or why? Because you touch the neck, now it's a choke. They know, some of these people know less than nothing and are unqualified for that. And society The communities need to recruit the proper people to be on these boards, to make these decisions. You know, a seatbelt grip is not going to choke someone. It's going to control them. You know, and here, you know, they say, well, use a wrist lock, use this, that, and the other thing. Do you know how hard it is to apply a wrist lock on someone who is fighting with you?
And do you know how easy it is to break one of those small bones in the wrist while using a wrist lock?
Yeah.
Right? So,
especially if you do it wrong.
Oh, 100%. So when I reviewed the Atlanta shooting.
Oh, yeah, we should pull that one.
Right? When I reviewed the Atlanta shooting, you have two officers, right? And you have the assailant on the ground in a seated position. And the assailant's able to dislodge the taser, get back to his feet, right? And all that would have taken was the officer standing behind him to perform a simple seatbelt grip to control the upper body and torso. Takes away his ability to take the taser out of the hand.
Yep.
And we have no problems.
Yep.
But instead we have another person dead.
Yep.
Right? Two officers brought up on charges. Mm-hmm. Right? Because of lack of training.
Right. And, you know, to me, this is a justified shooting, but unnecessarily justified
100%.
because it should have never got to that point.
100%.
Well, and that's what I was going to say before you guys answered my question was I'm sure there's locks and grips that you can do that I was going to say wrist lock, and you guys answered that. Apparently that's not a technique that would be ideal.
Well,
but I'm sure if you had the proper training, I'm sure if you were in a similar situation, you would have proper training to subdue rather than I'm seeing, I don't know if these are the correct moves or not, but I've seen like suplex and holds and they're not.
Well,
the one thing that I saw on the first video with the state police in Pennsylvania, I saw a lot of striking. I saw punches.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not an expert in striking.
So I want to talk about
your field.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because the strikes that they did were all arm punches and horrible. Okay, that's number one.
Say, yeah.
Number two was
And how was it perceived on the video?
It looks terrible
to the person that's
terrible.
reviewing the film.
Yeah. Looks terrible. They beat the crap out of that guy, and that guy fought for his life.
That's it.
Now the other thing is too, if you look how the big state trooper, I guess his name was Kelly, the bigger guy. Mm-hmm. You see how close he stood and had his hands here in his belt. Mm-hmm. Why didn't he have his hands up like this and have that distance? That's how. You know that he positioned himself improperly, and again, that's all part of the training. And 100%. They're not trained properly. And these are PA state troopers. These aren't, you know, this isn't, you know, not wherever, someplace in Podunk. So let's watch this and see. There's so many critical mistakes here. Now, again, was the suspect perpetrator wrong? Yeah, but 100%. It shouldn't have had to get there. It should be a non-issue.
Breaking news just in from Atlanta. The police chief just stepping down in the way.
Right there, that position right there.
How do you lose that?
The police officer in the back, right there.
Right.
If he knew what he was doing,
right. What is
over right there?
It's over. And look at he just
out of it.
Just
turning back towards the officers. Investigators say he pointed that stun gun at them. Then one of the officers opened fire. The mayor said she believes it was an unnecessary use of deadly force.
Okay, well, she doesn't know too much.
Tonight, this violent struggle that turned deadly is under investigation. Georgia authorities reviewing video showing Atlanta police shooting and killing Rayshard Brooks when he ran away after allegedly resisting arrest.
I don't want anyone in any circumstances to rush to any form of judgment. It's very easy to do in these cases on either side. We realize there's a tremendous amount of emotion.
Friday night at 10:33, officers were called to this Wendy's parking lot about complaints that Brooks was allegedly asleep in his vehicle, blocking the drive-thru. The officers claim he failed a sobriety test. They say when they went to arrest him, he resisted. Police say in the
right there.
Yep.
Seatbelt grip.
Yep. It's over. It's over. Yeah, and you just turn him onto the ground. That's it. Cuff him.
And then we end up in this scenario because of lack of training.
Right. And you end up with somebody else dead and
somebody else dead
and a whole bunch of turmoil.
Divide in the country.
Right.
Reaches down and retrieves his weapon from his holster, discharges it, strikes Mr. Brooks there on the parking lot, and he goes down. That information has been corroborated by a witness that we have interviewed.
Tonight, the police chief now resigning after weeks of criticism. The mayor calling for the officers involved to be fired.
I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force.
Isn't there a thing called a court of law?
Well, notice this, though. Everybody in society wants reform,
just saw right
Everybody wants reform, and I do agree to a certain degree that it does need to happen, right? But everybody waits for something bad to happen before they call for reform.
Exactly.
So it's reactive and not proactive.
Exactly. And this is how the thing I want to drive home too, because we discussed this like 8-9 months ago that the police need proper jiu-jitsu, grappling, defensive tactics training. You need that.
And it can't be trained one time a year.
No.
Because our defensive tactics refresher is 1 8-hour day for the year, right? And I always tell people, that ask me about jiu-jitsu and law enforcement and how credible is it. And you know what? When you're in the street, the goal is to not submit somebody.
No.
Like you don't learn jiu-jitsu as a law enforcement officer to tap them out or to choke them out. You're getting positional awareness.
Exactly.
Right? You're learning how to control somebody else's body weight, which is different than going to the gym and squatting 300 pounds.
Right.
Body weight moves different.
Exactly.
And you need to know how to control that. Furthermore, right, you need to be able to control yourself as the officer from a physiological standpoint so that you don't feel like you have to reach for your gun or your taser or something else. One of the biggest things that I feel all officers in jiu-jitsu or that are thinking about taking jiu-jitsu will get, you will learn the art of what it feels like to be attacked.
Yes.
And you will learn how to make proper and sound decisions under fire.
Yep. And the other thing is that, how about balance? I mean, these guys are falling all over the place, because again, they're not used to being attacked. They're also, they're not used to having the physical confrontation in a regular basis. Look, when you go live, even though, we know it's a safe environment, this, that, and the other thing, but still, you know what? Your adrenaline gets pumping. You're working and you're learning how to deal with that. You're learning how to control that so you can use it to your advantage when you're in a situation instead of, oh gosh, last time I did this, something happened, but you're used to doing it. Sure. I mean, I put together this program and I call it Leo Less Than Lethal. And, I've got a couple of local police departments interested in it and moving forward with it. Hopefully that it comes to fruition and it shows something proactive, because here's the other fear that I have, and it's already happening. Okay, is that if law enforcement doesn't take a proactive stance on this and start employing real training, somebody else is going to dictate the terms to them, and then that person doesn't know anything. That's why they don't want them to do a seatbelt technique, because they perceive it as a choke.
That's right.
Okay. And this is the danger. So I'm trying to put this forth. Guys, wake up, get on board now. You put in the work, you set the parameters. So because if the decision is not made, if you don't make the decision, someone's going to make it for you.
Sure. Well, Phil, you brought up a great point that I want to go back to before I forget.
Sure.
Right. So you brought up balance, right? And what things affect balance? Strength, excess body weight, right? One of the things that I've been saying for the longest period of time, right? Most police officers have a 20-year career before retirement. They should have physical fitness evaluations every single year.
Every year.
You should not be 180 pounds in your first year of a law enforcement career, and then in the fifth year, you're 250. The job requires you to maintain a level of physical fitness.
Yes.
You may have to run 200-300 yards. You may have to hop over a fence. You need to have the body weight to be able to do that.
And the thing is, the goal of an officer should be, hey, you know what? I want to wear the same size uniform from the day I graduate the academy to the day I retire. Sure. And it can be done. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But you know what? Life isn't easy.
Right.
Okay. You want the job, you got to, instead, I did this a while ago on one of my first podcasts. I addressed the training criteria and how they've lowered it dramatically. I mean, it was 24 push-ups.
Yeah.
And people are complaining about it. A vertical jump of 15 inches. A riser on a stair is 7 inches. And you're saying that's too high of a vertical jump? I mean, a 1.5 mile run in 15:55 and you're whining about this? I mean, come on, man. I can walk that backwards and I'm done.
Well, think about this, right? So right now you have, many groups in society calling for reform.
Yes.
And again, I believe it should be there and it needs to happen. But I don't hear anyone talking about exactly what reform needs to happen.
No.
Right? So everybody has this great idea of reform, but I don't see many things coming to the table. What I see is money being taken, right? Units being disbanded.
Yeah.
Crime going up. All right? But here's the other thing, and we talked briefly about this in the car ride down, right? So part of having reform, okay, is also having open dialect. And if your officers are not allowed to be able to voice opinions or speak up out of fear of losing their job or being, mistreated or whatever the case may be, then don't expect too much reform without having open dialogue.
See, this is a huge problem. This is a huge, huge problem. Dialogue, open dialogue. And you're saying, look, I can't blame the officers, because if you present something like the way that we feel about these things, and you don't word it exactly, precisely, with
you have an X on your back?
Yes, with well-crafted wording,
politically correct
wording, you're going to get hammered.
Yep.
And you know what? But I mean, that's not open dialogue.
It's not.
It's not. You have to tell the truth. You have to be able to say what is truly happening there, instead of being labeled a racist or a sexist or whatever,
or a non-company man,
right?
Yeah,
or you're against the grade, something. You're a maverick, This is, if you want to elicit change, which we all agree that there's change.
People need to sit down and have an open discussion.
Yes.
And they shouldn't have to fear for their jobs because they have a wife and children and a house, and they don't want to be threatened with, do you like this job? Because if you do, keep your mouth shut, right? If people want true change and reform, they need to be able to speak freely without the fear of losing their career.
Exactly. And you know what? I don't see this, especially now, like, where officers and chiefs of police retiring because somebody makes actually a justified shooting. But again, we'll roll back. It didn't have to get to that point. I'll bring this up. Okay, if we were the two arresting officers and that guy, where does that go? It's a non-incident.
It's a non-incident.
Right. Because the guy never gets the gun, never gets the taser, never gets away. None of that.
I mean, listen, I was publicly open about what I saw on the Atlanta shooting, and that was an absolute embarrassment. Complete embarrassment to have your own weapon taken from you from a seated position and not be able to establish a level of control. That was a complete embarrassment. But how many times have we seen similar videos, and the only thing that's different is the place and the people that are involved.
Yep.
That's the only difference.
Exactly.
In both clips, they have them for a second. And I know if you two were there, it'd be a totally different story. And that's where it escalates, is the rolling out of it and getting away. Every time they have the suspect somewhat contained for a second, and then
if it goes to the ground, you start rolling around, you've lost control of the situation. They should have that. They should hunker down. You should have a proper body weight displacement. You should have the proper balance. And the only way you're going to get that is through live training. You can go squat all you want. You can do all the bench press you want. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help you in this instance. You have to be able to do man-to-man maneuvers. And you're going to get that from your jiu-jitsu, from your wrestling, from your defensive tactics, and from practicing them. And you know what? You're not going to do it once a year for 8 hours and think you're an expert. No. And do you have to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu? No.
No, you don't.
But you have to know what you're doing.
But you should be, at minimum, blue belt experience.
Yes, I agree. 100%.
Every law enforcement officer in the United States should at least have the knowledge of a blue belt, okay? So that they understand, like I said, position, control.
Yep.
How much force is necessary to get control.
Here's the thing too. When you get to a certain level, look, I know when I'm demonstrating a choke, I know you too, right? You put it on and you let go.
Yeah.
Because you know when it's going to start taking effect and when it's going to go out of control, so you know when to let go.
Yep.
And if you're trained like that, if you're trained properly, you know exactly how much force to exert on someone.
Same thing with joint manipulation.
Exactly. How easy is it to break an arm?
It's very simple, right? But you gain the experience and the knowledge by training on a continuous basis.
Exactly.
So that you understand how much force needs to be applied before injury happens.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Like, look, I know that in real life situations, I put a key lock or Americana, I guess they call it now, on someone and had to hold him there right before his arm was going to snap. And I talked to him and I said, okay, I'm going to snap your arm if you don't stop. Okay.
Well, I have a little advantage in my school over many schools because I have the law enforcement experience.
Yes.
And I understand the directives that are used while you're trying to get somebody under control, right? And I understand the use of force. So when I'm teaching my law enforcement officers, right, I'm teaching them with all of those things in mind. I may be showing an arm lock or I may be show a similar joint manipulation, but all the meanwhile, I'm letting them know as my students, keep in mind, your gun will be holstered here.
Yes.
Your taser will be holstered here.
Right.
Right? Somebody could have a video camera here. Right? All of these things are going on that you as a police officer need to be aware of and be cognizant of so that everybody ends safely. The control is demonstrated. Nobody gets hurt. You don't lose your weapon. Right? It looks good on camera because body camera and everybody else is going to be filming these days. So when I teach my law enforcement officer classes at my school, they're getting that experience and they jive with how I teach it because they know that I understand it as well. Right? So what I do in my classes with the law enforcement guys, I'll give them scenarios. Straight up police scenarios. Things that I may have seen on YouTube, things I may have seen on CNN, and I'll replicate the scenario for them. And then I'll say, you know what? As soon as you touch each other, it's live.
Yeah.
Because I want to see how my student is going to respond under fire.
That's what it takes. You have to be tested under fire.
That's it.
It's like forged in fire. The more that you're tested, the stronger the metal is. The more you're tested, the better your technique is. And if they're not put to task here, how are you going to know if it works? How are you going to know if you can perform that?
100%.
How come these aren't like we're going back to what we talked about 8 months ago?
Yeah.
How come this is not remotely even close to being taught?
I'll tell you why.
And I'm going to follow you up.
Okay.
Nope, it's your show. It's your show.
No,
I'm going to follow you up.
You're my guest.
I'm going to follow you up.
Okay.
All right. So
Go ahead.
here's my opinion and my response to that. And again, this is my opinion. I know that there are people that I work with that are going to end up watching this, and that's okay, right? We live in a society right now of lawsuits, and everybody's looking for the next lawsuit.
Yep.
And what I'm seeing is that the techniques and the defensive tactics being given to the officers aren't being shown to actually help the officer. It's there to prevent lawsuit against the county.
Right.
Or the department.
Yeah.
Right? So you're giving the officer bare minimum to work with so that should something happen, they can say, the prosecutor or whoever can say, well, did they complete their defensive tactics? Because if so, we're indemnified. It's not about that. The officers need to be given the best training.
Yeah, and they're not.
And they're not being given the best training.
Aren't you going to have more lawsuits with someone getting shot and killed 100%. Rather than a broken arm? Well,
here, let me tell you something. It's if insurance companies have a thing called actuaries, right? And so what they do, it all comes down to dollars and cents. So if they know, well, if we do this amount of training, it's going to cost this much, okay? But you know what? The off chance that we get, maybe 1 or 2 lawsuits a year, we can handle that. Again, it depends on the size of the department and so forth, right? And they had that factored into their costs already. So it's about dollars and cents. And the other thing is too, we discussed this before, the unions will protect and say, well, you don't have to do this. They're going to try to make it as easy as possible for the police officer. Unfortunately, I see that. I see that they don't want the police officers to have to be put in that position. Because look, if you have to go complete your training, if you have to train, once or twice a week or whatever it is, or you're, not going to move forward. If you have to be a certain weight, you have to pass a physical exam every year. You have to perform physically.
How many people would that weed out right there? If there was a physical fitness evaluation that you had to complete, a lot of people are going to be weeded out right off the bat.
And you know what? Fine. I'm okay with it. Get somebody who wants the job. And you know what? Look, I know that I have to work my butt off to keep my job, because if I don't work my butt off, there's somebody else working my butt off.
It's also a pride thing too.
Exactly. Have some pride, man.
Have some pride.
Have some pride.
Have some pride in yourself. Have some pride in your department. Have some pride in your family.
Yep.
Have some pride in your children, right? So every officer that goes on their tour, right, should be equipped with everything that they need to make sure that they are able to return back home to their wife and to their children.
Yep. And you know what? By not requiring them to train hands-on with something that's going to help them, we're not equipping them properly. And you know what? And we have to acknowledge this. And the other thing is too, what about the psychological evaluations that should be done as well? Because, you know, every so often, police officers should get a psychological examination. Are they afraid of the answers?
I mentioned this on Facebook about a month ago, right? And again, there are folks that will see this that I work with that are supervisors, that are above me in terms of rank, and that is okay. And here's the reason why. Open dialect.
Yeah. You got to talk.
I'm just saying, people that want reform, let's have an open discussion about what the reform is going to entail. I agree. I went on Facebook and said, I was psychologically evaluated one time at the beginning of my career. That should happen at least every 3 to 5 years during that career, because divorce, death of a family member, loss of house, right? When an individual starts their career, they're probably not going to be the same at the end of their career. Right. And it needs to be evaluated by a doctor throughout the course of their career. So again, we don't have lawsuits, and we don't have people kneeling on other people's backs, and we don't have those things happen.
Right. Look, can you avoid everything? No, but can you minimize it? Yes, you can. I am of the belief that you can. And the things that these measures, people have to speak up, and you know, it's got to come from the rank and file. The police officers have to realize that, you know what? Here's my weaknesses. You know, I always say, you know, train your weakness, compete your strengths.
Sure.
And you know what? You have to identify these weaknesses, and you know what? Most of them have a weakness in hand-to-hand tactics. Yeah. So get the training. Think about get your department.
We receive a drug test once every quarter. It's important.
Yeah, it is.
Because you need to know that your officers are not doing heroin, cocaine. That's important. And we do it once every quarter. We should be able to get a psychological evaluation at least once every 3 years.
Yeah. Look, things change. Look. Why do you think a lot of marriages don't work? Why? People change over time.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe you could have a cop started off great and then maybe developed a racial bias because he's being spit on, cursed at.
Self-radicalization.
Yep, self-radicalization.
All those things need to be looked at.
They have to be looked at, man, because you got this person on the street who's a representative of the community. And plus they have the use of deadly force at their disposal. So, you know, these things have to be looked at. And again, you know, I know we're going to go back to this again, is that if you're highly trained with your hands and you can handle yourself physically, are you going to rely on that
You're
weapon?
Less apt to use the weapon.
Exactly.
You know, or the ASP or the taser or anything else. You know, I personally feel if I had to use those tools, that's embarrassing for me.
Yeah.
But again, I've taken my own pride to learn an art that's going to help me control myself, control someone else, not hurt them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And then wind up, you know, on top. Without
you know, another thing that I'd like to just talk briefly about here, because we had talked about this podcast, Phil.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I'm pretty active on social media with, you know, Facebook and posting, and you know, our department does have social media
guidelines
that we can and can't do, and I try to stay within the confines of those guidelines. I may blur the lines every now and then, but again, like I keep going back to, having open dialogue is important if people expect reform, and you can't have reform and have people keep their mouths shut. No. It's just not going to work. Those two go hand in hand. But at the beginning of the rioting and at the beginning of, you know, the looting and right after, you know, Minneapolis, everything was geared towards race.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden that race went to the police departments, right? So I publicly went on Facebook and I said, listen, you cannot even sit for the police department exam until you're 21 years old. So from the time someone's born until 21, that seed of hate, that seed of bigotry, that seed of racism was already sown at home with the upbringing. The police department did not teach that.
No.
That was taught at home. The only thing the police department did was give you the means to now go out and be able to demonstrate that hate on somebody that you don't like for whatever reason it is, right? And that probably rubbed people the wrong way. But let's face it, police departments do not teach racism.
No.
My department does a very good job of in-service training for us on a yearly basis, although I would like to see more effort towards the defensive tactics side of it.
Yes.
Right? Our department does a very good job of training, CPR, fire safety. We get the whole gamut, and they do a good job with it, right? I forgot where I was going with this for a minute, but I'd like to see in the future departments spending more money on their officers, defensive tactics.
Yes.
The firearms instruction is important, for the officers. But again, the firearms instruction that I'm seeing, when we looked at that video early on right there, the video of the state police.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how many shots were fired and how many were missed. And the reason why is because when we go to the range and requalify, nobody's shooting back. Our heart rate isn't up. It's a still target.
Yep.
Right? And those
straight and balanced,
those physiological things change
Yeah.
when somebody's firing back,
Yeah.
when your heart rate is up, when you're shaking. Jiu-jitsu will teach you how to stay under fire
And
in a
handle
situation like that.
Exactly, because you're used to dealing with the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
You're used to being under duress.
Yeah.
If you're only under duress when you have a confrontation, how are you going to react?
Yeah.
If you're used to being under duress, you're used to someone bigger than you, stronger than you, on top of you, and you trying to get out. You're telling me that you're not under duress?
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah! So you're learning how to deal with this on a regular basis, and until you're doing that, you know what? These incidents are gonna
continue to happen.
Continue to happen.
Continue to happen.
Yep.
Like every new jiu-jitsu student that comes in, what's the biggest thing that they have to learn? They have to learn how to curb the claustrophobic feeling when somebody's on top of them. You can only learn that by training it.
Yep.
You can't get that anywhere else.
Exactly. And they waste so much energy. They're spastic all over the place. They leave themselves open. I mean, an experienced guy just kind of sits there and slips on from one move to the next. And these guys are exhausted. And, the experienced person just kind of chilling out, having a cup of coffee.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's definitely true.
Yeah. So now the next thing is, how are we going to exact this change? I'll tell you that guys like us have to be pinged. Guys like us have to be asked. And you know what? And I know that you're doing it proactively, and so am I. Mm-hmm. But the thing that bothers me the most is that as soon as this happened, I went and I contacted every single chief of police in my neighborhood, in the neighboring area. And a few responded. Some completely ignored it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it should be the other way around. They should be seeking out professionals in defensive tactics, in jiu-jitsu, in grappling arts. They should be seeking them out actively. Because again, I'll circle back to this, because if the police departments don't go and set the standards and show proactive measures, somebody else is setting it for them.
Sure.
And once that's done, it's done.
Unfortunately, though, it comes down to money.
Yep.
Politics.
Yep.
Right? Favoritism.
Uh-huh.
All of these things need to be looked at and reviewed when people are talking about reform. And again, I'm not going to get into the particulars of it, because I myself, we have our own set of guidelines regarding social media policy, right? But true reform is only going to happen when people sit down and are allowed to speak openly about what's going on inside the departments, what's going on inside of the communities, what's going on inside of individual homes,
right?
Because that's where the seed of racism is truly born, right? Don't expect reform if we can't sit down and have a conversation without the fear of being fired, right? Being oppressed, because that stuff is real.
Unfortunately, when we're talking about reform, reform means something different to many people. Like to you and I, it means, hey, let's equip our officers with better tactics. Let's have them give them psychological exams. Let's have them
Physical
be in
fitness.
shape. Have them be in physical tests every year. But to some of these people, and it seems that they're the loudest ones right now getting the attention. They just want to reform it by abolishing it, which will only lead to anarchy. And my fear is that they're using this race card as the mechanism to cloak what they really want to do.
Well, it's funny because I'm in a unique situation with even this. My parents are mixed. I work for the sheriff's department. So technically, I'm in the middle of it all. Right? And, the way I see it and the way the public sees it, probably completely different because I do have mixed parents.
Right.
And I do work for the police department. So I do see from the inside of the police department. And then when I see my parents, I see completely different. And, even my mother has said to me before, she was like, you know what? You're light skinned, Kyle.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like, to be dark skinned and be pulled over. And she's right. I don't. I have no idea.
You got a nice tan right now.
Yeah, I have a great tan, Thank God for my children are fishing. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't matter either.
No.
Because the blue line matters or the blue lives matter. They do. Black lives matters. They do.
Of course.
White lives matters. They do. The way I was raised by my family, you're either a good person or you're not.
Yep.
And that is based upon your actions and what you show.
Yep. I mean, unfortunately, now we're not listening to the words of Martin Luther King, who said to, I have a dream of someday where a person is judged on the character, on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Now it seems you're judged on the color of your skin and your sexual preference or sexual identity above all else. Shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Hey, is this a good person? And I have friends of all the spectrum. Okay. And most of them have friends all over the spectrum. And it's about who is this person internally, But the thing is that, it's easy to pick on race to divide us because, when you're seeing this constantly,
because it's deep. It's deep in American history, right?
Well, it's also even deeper than that. I'll even go farther. I'd say it's even tribal. It's even tribal because it's really funny because even whenever I watch a UFC fight, right? Because I go back to my basics, my tribal identity actually is a wrestler. So whenever there's a wrestler there, who am I rooting for?
The wrestler.
The wrestler, of course. So so that even so whatever your particular tribalism you identify with, you're always going to default to that.
Yeah.
And if it happens to be race, well, that's very easily identifiable. So you're going to gravitate toward that.
Sure.
We're tribal beings. We want to be part of the group. It's a survival tactic because way back when there was a saber-toothed tiger, the people in the tribe who had the spears survived.
Well, think about this though, right? Think about the power of the people.
Yeah.
If everybody worked together. The power of but when the news and the media is controlling the temperament throughout the communities and throughout society, what's the best way to break up that powerful bond?
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer.
Yep.
So agendas, personal agendas, party agendas,
Yep.
all of those things that are being pushed while there's a race war going on TV and a war between civilians and law enforcement going on TV.
Right.
What's going on behind the scenes?
Yep. And
agendas.
Agendas. And it's all it is about agendas. And you know what? I would love to fix all this, but we're only a couple people here. But you know what? If we can do our part, I'm going to do what I can.
Well, you know what, Phil? Like, we are helping because you have police officers that come to you. My school represents many different departments, including the New York State Police, NYPD, Ramapo, the Sheriff's Department. We are doing our role. But we need to be met with departments that see the value in what we're doing.
Exactly.
And they need to see that you cannot just put anybody in that role of teacher, right? Because then you're doing your entire department a disservice. Right? Think about it. I tell this to people all the time. It takes 8 years to become a doctor. It takes 10 to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu. So the level of commitment, the level of knowledge and expertise is basically equal to, if not more so, than a doctor.
Well, that's why it's called a professor.
Yes.
Too. You know? Yeah.
And we are doing our role, you and I, and the other instructors in the world, right? But we need to be met with departments that are open to,
yes,
right? Open to having instructors, professors, experts help out in terms of the defensive tactics.
Well, the other thing is too, I mean, I know you're a police officer, but me being on the outside, not being a law enforcement officer, especially that I'm not in their particular department, also sets apart there's no judgment. Like I won't be judging them and in the department because I'm an outsider. So it's kind of that's one good thing I can do. And you have many different departments, so you're not in all these guys' departments. Right. But like I said before, these departments need to reach out to guys like us who can really get this done and help prepare them. Because I'll tell you, here's the other problem. We live in a world of instant gratification, instant changes. Like that's why there's all these knee-jerk reactions. Defund the police. No, that's just silly.
That's the easy answer.
That's the easy answer. And you take the shortcut, you take the easy answer, you know what's going to happen? You're going to fall on your face.
Yep,
and it's already happening. It's already happening. So you know what? There's no quick fix to this. What you have to do is take a real step back and say, you know what? One of the things we need to do, these guys all have to learn jiu-jitsu. They all got to learn better defensive tactics. Yeah. And I'm talking jiu-jitsu for law enforcement, like, weapon retention. I'm talking how to be able to do takedowns, how not to get taken down.
Yep, that's important.
It's huge.
That's important.
Because now when you go to the ground, you're rolling around, chance of you losing your weapon have just increased dramatically. So, they have to go and take these proactive measures. They got to have the guts to do it. And this is what I'm challenging.
So here what we're talking about.
Right.
Reform.
We got people calling in.
Reform.
Yeah, reform.
Let's
have that open dialogue. Let's have that reform. And
let people communicate openly. See where people are at. Let leaders of BLM sit down and meet with police department chiefs. What's going on in society? How can we help each other? Things like that.
But let me ask you do you really think that, have you seen, I mean, obviously you have seen some of the doctrine being espoused by the BLM and Antifa and those groups. And I mean, do you think that there is any middle ground with these guys?
I mean, listen, those are difficult questions. And they're tough for me to answer because I'm kind of in the middle with my family situation. So I don't view people, and I wasn't raised to view people in terms of color, right? I just wasn't. That's not how mom and dad raised me.
I wasn't raised like that either.
And that's just what it is. So, when I'm working and if I walk into a cell that has a Caucasian male, African-American male, they don't get treated any differently just because of the color. They get treated the same, right? The dialogue is usually always good and respectful, and that is what it is.
As it should be.
As it should be. Case in point, and this is a very, very good point right here. So my kids are starting to get to an age where they're starting to notice, other people that may be different, and they ask questions. Why is so and so brown? Why is so? Why is their eyes different than yours? And you know what my answer is? They're no different than you. But when I talked earlier about that seed of hate being born at home, how I answered that question to my own children will determine how they view other people as they get older in life. Yep. That was my opportunity as dad to give them the right answer and give them the tools to be able to move forward in life and view people not for the color of their skin, but for their character and goodness inside of their heart.
Exactly.
Period.
And that's all you can do, and that's the best job you can ever do as a parent.
That's it.
And as a responsible citizen.
Yep.
Because that's you have to. And when people say colorblind, you know what? I mean, obviously you look at someone, you can see you're not colorblind, but you treat everyone the same. There's a difference. I mean, I'm not going to, obviously if I see someone's Asian or something, whatever, or black or African, whatever, obviously you can see that. You can't be colorblind. That's just disingenuous. But treating everyone the same. But you know what? If someone walks in with and I know we both have mank and stuff, but if they have a tattoo down here, stuff in their
Perception.
nose, right, wearing a hoodie over their head, like, I mean, what is this person trying to elicit? What reaction are they trying to elicit? Are they trying to elicit one of openness and friendliness, or are they trying to make a statement and put fear or apprehension to people that they meet? So, and then they wonder why people get treated different
100%.
ways.
You know, Mom and Dad told me early on, they said, you know what, you're to respect everyone until they give you a reason to not respect them anymore.
Right. And I'll tell you, my parents said to me, you know what, you're no better than anyone, no one's better than you.
100%. Like, I don't understand how difficult this situation is, and maybe maybe I'm ignorant to it. I don't know, but I choose to not believe all of the things that I see on TV or all the things that I read in the newspaper.
I can't.
I look at it all, I take it all in, and then I will sit there and think, and then I will evaluate it and come to my own conclusion myself. But I'm not going to look at CNN and say, okay, that headline reads this, and that's what I believe.
Right. I mean, and that's the problem, because most people's perceptions are formed when they see the media, when they read these news reports, when they get exposed to that stuff, and especially you're in a lockdown in a coronavirus situation, got CNN on 24 hours a day, bombarding your brain with this stuff. I mean, so many times, I go out. I noticed this like maybe 2 years ago. I'm down to Point Pleasant with my little one, and we're going to rides in the amusement park, and I'm looking around, and again, there's some type of racial thing, on the news or something, and then I'm looking at all these kids hanging out. I'm looking at these young kids, teenagers, all different races, and everyone's having a good time. Yeah. I'm sitting where I'm on a ride, right, and then on the thing that spins around,
the tilt-a-whirl,
whatever is right. So I'm sitting on it and lined up, and then this guy was there with his daughter, different heritage than my own, and he strikes up a conversation. We start talking, we're laughing, having a good time with the kids, and then bump fists when we leave, whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody's just the perception being advocated by this biased media is wrong.
Yeah. On many levels.
Like here, you look at the inflated situation with the police. Come on, you look at the stats. I mean, I'm not going to quote these stats again. I've said them a million times.
Crime has gone up in New York City.
Oh, dramatically.
Since the defund process.
Yeah,
that's a fact. Because I have many NYPD guys that reach out to me openly because they're my students, and they're in a tough situation right now.
I would not want to be a cop in New York City because it's gone up. It's doubled every week since this stuff has happened. Doubled. Homicides have doubled. I mean, shootings. I mean, police. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but don't the criminals know that you're not allowed to carry a gun in New York City and that shooting someone is illegal?
Yeah.
How come that doesn't stop them?
Yeah, of course.
But it's just.
But again, though, those folks that are making those decisions are able to look at the statistics and see the sharp incline of crime in the last couple weeks.
And the answer is to defund the police?
Well, there's nothing wrong with looking in the mirror and admitting wrong and admitting that these folks that are making the decisions have the ability to change it back to what it was or make it even better.
You know what? They don't have the ability. They have the responsibility. Look, they've been elected to these positions to protect the public, the law-abiding citizens, the ones that count on them, the ones that pay them, the ones that elected them. Yeah. It's about time that these people get held accountable, and people have to stop. They have to stop thinking about party and race and this, that, and the other thing. They have to think about who is serving me the best, and it's not happening. And things like reforming the police the right way, having them learn jiu-jitsu, having them learn good defensive tactics is going to reduce these incidences and make for a better society.
Sure.
Not what they're allowing to go on, and actually not only allowing it, but they're promoting this.
Promoting it, yeah.
They are promoting this.
That's
Yeah, we got to do the exact opposite of defund the police. We need to more funding for training, and you need to have a psychological evaluator in every precinct who's there to talk to and train. I mean, these seem like easy.
These are common sense.
Things.
This is common sense.
Both videos were rolling around. Guy got away. Okay, jiu-jitsu, and let's take care of the mental capacities.
But let's face it though, right? So at some point, as an officer, as a supervisor, you have to answer and you have to go to the next person.
Yes.
For the reform to truly happen.
Right.
Right? So for me, I would have to go to a supervisor who then reports to a supervisor, who then reports to another, who then reports to the sheriff, who then reports to Cuomo. So at the top levels of the country, those folks need to be the one that ultimately make the decision for reform and change for society.
The only way it's going to happen is putting pressure on those in power. And, they want these votes so bad, they have to start taking care of the constituents. Yeah. And until they start doing that, we're not going to have these reforms. But we need to start, by doing things like this. I had Percy on the other day, Khyl on today, Tom Patiri on later. We got to bring this to the forefront. That's why, people like and share. Make sure. Now, do we have any questions, Doug? I see some stuff rolling
No, those
up.
are just people thumbs up.
Awesome.
But I do want to just add, we'll get your guys' opinion on it too, because we just talked about, the people in the high areas. Mm-hmm. A huge problem I'm seeing with them and the media and everyone, we rather see America burn and fail based on whatever you believe or who the president is. We'd rather see these people fail and America burn the ground than America succeed.
Well, who's the we? It's not us.
No, there's people out there that rather America
I'll tell you who it is.
Than us to succeed and be prosperous.
I'll tell you, I'll be straightforward with it. It's the communist news networks. It's the MSLSD. It's all this left wing crazy agenda.
Think about this, right?
Forcing people.
If you watch the news, how many positive stories do you see on the news? And if you do see them, how short is the interval that you're looking at them?
Yeah.
But the negative news and the streets burning and the rioting and all those things, they'll put that on there for a half hour, 45 minutes, because that's going to keep you in tune to what's going on.
The only time you see something nice is when it's the local News 12 or something. You see something
get a cat out of a tree.
Or some kid got a scholarship or, whatever. I mean, that's, you don't see
the news
stuff.
is even controlled.
100%.
They're controlled what they can pump out. Think about it, right? We went from a mandated government lockdown with coronavirus to an all-out war, rioting, race war in the matter of a week.
And then, now back to the lockdown.
And now we're going back to the lockdown of coronavirus. So, you still have businesses that are being forbidden to open.
Right.
But then we switch over to a war between civilians and police, right? And now that's kind of, died down just a little bit. But now we're going to bring coronavirus back into play. I was just telling Phil, when you turn on the news, right, you'll see total cases of coronavirus.
Yeah.
You'll see total deaths of coronavirus. But you don't see total recoveries of coronavirus.
No.
Because that doesn't sell.
Yeah. No, it doesn't sell. It doesn't sell. I'm saying, we're living the only times when, it's permissible to steal a TV, but not to sell one.
Yeah. and mind you, too, in the beginning of coronavirus, I was kind of up in the air, do I really believe it? Listen, I've had students of mine, guys that are at NYPD, have coronavirus.
Yeah.
I've had parents that have, it's real.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real virus, right? Mm-hmm. But let's paint the broad scope and not just deaths and total cases. Tell me how many people actually recovered, healthy,
right?
Because that's just as important.
Well, here, my main guy, Eric, that works at my studio with me, right? He went to California in December. Him and his family went there for 3 weeks. Comes back. We're training jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is pretty high contact.
I'd say.
And then all of a sudden he gets sick. A flu runs through his whole family. Okay, they get tested. They don't have the flu, whatever. He recovers 4 days, 5 days, whatever it was. Comes back. We're training again. Now the coronavirus thing hits, in March. And so, again, when this whole thing happened, I'm like, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to, mask, gloves, whole thing, And then he goes and gets tested. He had, him and his wife have the antibodies. So evidently they had the coronavirus. And I was wrestling with him, and I didn't get it.
Did you ever get tested for the antibodies?
Yeah, I don't have them.
Yeah, I never went. I
Yeah,
probably should.
I'm going to go again because it's not such a great.
Yeah, I should go for the safety of my students,
Yeah,
and those
yeah.
that are around me.
Yeah, I went and I didn't have it.
I mean, listen, like we've had officers, even at my facility, come down with the virus, and all of the officers have recovered.
Yeah.
They're
thank God.
healthy.
Yeah.
They're well. Those things are just as important to note as those lives that unfortunately were lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me the full scope of what's going on, not just half of the story.
They just want to prevent with it. They just want to present what they want to present.
I just don't understand why we can't get the truth about anything. About any situation out there, there's no reputable source that we can turn to.
You would think of that in this day and age with all the media that we have and all the recordings and that stuff would get exposed properly. But it's those who are in control of what gets put out there.
Yeah.
The misinformation and the disinformation.
And the government's controlling the media.
Yep.
And the media is controlling the public.
There you go. And we're called nuts.
Well, I mean, we are.
Okay, well,
we
that's
are.
beside the point.
At least
Okay,
have
okay.
some logic, though.
Yeah, exactly. We do have some logic. Well, guys, hey,
This was a great show, and you know what? Like a lot of the things that we talked about today, and I may even get heat at my job for being here and openly talking about this.
I'll write you a note.
I hope not, though, because you have to be a leader and you have to stand for something.
Yes.
Right? Because if you're not a leader and you're not standing for anything, you serve no purpose.
No, I agree with you 100%.
Stand for something. And we talked about, and we were excited about doing this podcast today. And I'm glad that we did. And a lot of the things that, need to happen in the world in terms of open dialect, communication, those things are important. And folks shouldn't feel fearful or scared to lose their position for speaking openly.
No, they shouldn't. And this and either side, because you have to have all perspectives. And if you keep shutting down one perspective, you run into a fascist state. And that's where we're headed right now. And you know what? I'm not taking the lying down. You know what? Look, you and I'm not worried about me, and you're always going to handle yourself. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about what we're leaving our kids. Yeah. Are we going to leave our kids with a mess? I don't want to do that, man. I want to leave them with something better. I don't want to leave them with something broken.
Yep. I agree.
Absolutely.
So, I agree.
All right, guys.
All right.
Okay, great.
I appreciate you guys.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me back on today.
We're going to do our music to.
Absolutely.
All right.
That sweat is real.
This is Master Phil.
Is it still
in your
live?
corner? Still live. We're still live, brother. Still live.
Baby.
Yeah, we're still rolling. This is Master Phil in your corner with another great episode from our undefeated media studios. And let's take it off.
do a good job.
Strength and honor.